Well, it's always my pleasure to have the great Dr. Walter Williams. How are you, my friend?
Hi, Mark.
Yes, sir. Well, now, Walter, I view August 2nd as the modern-day Independence Day. I view it as the modern-day July 4th. What's the problem here?
Well, that's if the Republicans don't cave.
Exactly.
And there's a good chance that they can cave. And so far, they're talking and talking. Our big problem is not tax revenue; it's spending. I was before I got on the show with you, I was just looking something up, and it turns out that since 1960, federal tax revenue has gone up 20 times. It's 20 times greater now than it was in 1960. But what's the problem? It turns out that spending is 42 times
Good Lord.
greater than 1960. So whenever spending is going to be greater than taxes, you're always going to have a deficit and you're going to have increasing debt.
Now, Walter Williams, how many people does it take to make a corporate jet?
Say that
Hundreds
again?
of thousands, right?
I didn't hear the question.
How many people does it take to make a jet? Remember that iPencil thing from Freedom House?
Millions.
Millions,
You
right?
You can't tell. It's very difficult to tell.
How about a yacht?
Well, it's so that the listeners will can kind of understand the argument that was made by Leonard Reed about it's called iPencil, and you should check it out on feed.
Oh, I read it last week on the air.
Yeah, right. Anyway, it turns out there's a yacht. Well, it requires steel. Well, do you know anything about mining for steel? I mean, and the workers have to wear goggles, and the workers have to have shoes. I mean, they're literally an untold number of people that it takes to make almost anything.
And yet Obama wants us to think of a big fat guy with a cigar riding on a jet to his yacht and taking a cruise around Europe. I mean, around the continents, the continent of Europe and so forth. So, but the fact is, he would put an enormous number of people out of work, wouldn't he?
Oh, absolutely right. And if he's talking about, you hear people saying, well, we should have a tax on some luxury things like luxury planes and cars and yachts, as you mentioned. Well, we tried that when was it 1990 or 1991?
Yeah, they killed that.
It ran and the people who suffered were people who are working, producing planes or producing these expensive yachts, and because rich people, they were buying their yachts elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. Why do we accept? I mean, what is the constitutional basis for this class warfare?
There's no constitutional basis for roughly 2/3 or 3/4 of what the Congress spends money for.
Yeah. And these attacks, like, we're all supposed to be. I guess they think we're stupid, don't they? Because I'm supposed to get pissed off at the guy down the street if he makes more money. Why do I care if the guy down the street makes more money? He's not bothering me.
Well, that's you're absolutely right. But the point is that the politics of envy, it sells. As a matter of fact, there was a biblical admonition in the Ten Commandments: "Thou shalt not covet that which is thy neighbor's." But however, we do covet. We covet, and politicians are able to exploit some of the envy and some of the ignorance of many Americans. They're able to sell Americans on the idea that you're poor because somebody's rich.
You said, and I agree with you, that so much what the federal government does, it doesn't have authority to do under the Constitution. The Constitution hasn't been amended, for so many of these things. So what do we have here? What is this?
Well, we have mob rule. We're living by various edicts, and if people, one of the tragedies, Mark, is that if the founders were to come back again, if James Madison or Thomas Jefferson or John Adams, if they were running for the presidency today, I believe that most Americans would hold these guys in utter contempt because of the values that they held for individual and personal liberty. That is, they would say things like, charity is not a function of government. And James Madison, he protested on the floor of the House in 1794 when Congress appropriated $15,000 to help some French refugees. And James Madison, the father of the Constitution, said that spending for the purposes of benevolence is not in the Constitution. He said, I cannot undertake to lay my finger on that article of the Constitution that authorizes Congress to spend the money of their constituents for the purpose of benevolence. If you look at federal spending today, 2/3 to 3/4 of it is for the purpose of benevolence.
Now, Walter Williams, let me ask you this. What should Speaker John Boehner, Republican leader of the Senate, McConnell do? Should they do anything?
Well, I think that since they have the power in the House of Representatives, I think that they ought to vote for spending reductions and then send it to the Senate and see whether the Senate will go along with it. And if the Senate, I doubt whether the Senate would go along with it, and let and if they did, let the president veto it. But I don't think that, I don't think things like you hear some of the politicians saying, well, before we have a debt limit increase, we're going to have a balanced budget amendment. Well, that is just a cop-out, because a balanced budget amendment will never become law before 5 or 6 years. And we could be broke by then.
Why can't we do both?
Well, yeah, we can do both. Yes, I think that there should be some kind of spending limitation on Congress. And matter of fact, I was on a committee, the spending limitation, National Tax Limitation Spending Committee, a panel in, let's say, 1979 with Milton Friedman and Bob Bork, and a bunch of other people, and we wanted to limit federal spending to 18% of the GNP.
Exactly.
And matter of fact, it passed in 1980. It passed the Senate in 1982. It didn't get through the House. When it was reintroduced in 1986, it didn't even pass the Senate.
Well, I think we ought to push that. But if some politician thinks that their vote in favor of that is a fig leaf for them to give the store away on the debt ceiling, well, we got to hold them responsible for that.
Oh, that is absolutely right. I don't think that the Republicans they have the strongest weapon in their hand right now. And then also, I think the word needs to go out that Congress or the Treasury can pay the interest on the debt come August 2nd, come October 2nd, come December 2nd, because I understand it's roughly about $300 billion coming into the federal government every week. It's
between 175 and 200 billion a month.
Okay, and that's plenty of money to pay the interest on the federal on the debt, but they'd have to cut something else. And so I'd much rather see them pay the interest and then cut something else.
This is what I say. Well, Obama thinks he's in a position of strength. No, he's not. As a matter of fact, if the Republicans do nothing, it's going to be cut.
That's right, and I think that the Republicans, if they play it smart, in which a lot of times they don't play it smart, something like 70% of Americans, according to polls, they don't want the debt ceiling raised.
Well, maybe what the Republicans should do is exactly what you mentioned, and Pat Buchanan wrote about this the other day too. Pass their own plan, send it to the Senate. Harry Reid will sit there and stare at it, because that's what he does well, stares at things, and then leave it to them. They've done their job. What else can they do? That
is right, and they should play hardball. Democrats have no problem playing playing hardball. With this health care thing, they're just in your face. They just voted it. This Obamacare. They didn't have any problem with playing hardball. I think the Republicans ought to get the guts enough to do the same thing.
Dr. Walter Williams, let me ask you a question. What kind of society are we in now? I wonder, honestly, I think about this a lot. It's not a constitutional republic. What kind of society is this? Well, it's hard to describe it, isn't it?
Well, yeah, that's right. It's not the kind of... If our grandparents were to come back today, they would not recognize our society in many respects. If you were to ask your great-grandfather, you say, great-grandfather, what kind of relationship did you have with the federal government?
None.
And maybe he would scratch his head and say, well, Mark, I used to talk to the mailman once in a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's it. He wasn't paying. He wasn't. He didn't have to give some identity number with everything he did. The Social Security, tell the IRS everything that he did, and he filled out income tax with one page.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, and then some things that we just don't pay too much attention to. That is, we're not as civil a nation as we were. I know I'm 75 years old, but I know when I was a kid sitting on the subway, a man would never allow a woman to be standing. The kind of language that's being used, the coarseness of our society, the kind of language that's being used in front of children and in front of women, I mean, it's entirely different from yesteryear. We are a different country, and if you want to know anything about our country, if you want to get some semblance of how our country was, you have to go to the Middle West. You have to go to the
this
middle
is
of our country.
This is a very important point. Now, why do you think that is? I mean, I think I know why you think that.
Well,
But why do you think that is?
I don't know. I'm just looking at the observations and the experience that I've had. Going to all. Actually, I've been to every state except Maine and giving lectures, and I see how people live quite differently. It's far more civility in the Middle West, and also in the South. It's far more civility than you would find on either coast.
Could it be, at least generally, without getting into the regional stuff, it's this assault on the civil society?
Yes, I do. I think so.
Because the institutions are being weakened.
That's right. And what we're trying to do in order to live with each other, we're using laws as a replacement for Emily Post rules of etiquette, for just common decency. And any society that depends on laws and policemen to protect itself is not really in good shape.
Mm-hmm. Well, Dr. Williams, it's always a pleasure to have you. I like to bring you on to reinforce my own beliefs. Sometimes I think, what the hell am I thinking here?
We're fellow Philadelphians as well.
That's true, we are. And how do you like those Phillies?
Oh, they're doing well this year. Very, very well.
Very nice. All right, my friend. Well, God bless you.
Okay.
Stay healthy.
We'll see you. Bye.
All right, take care. There's Walter Williams. Terrific guy.